I've had this new Suzuki DRZ4s for a few months now. Thank you to Suzuki for loaning it to me. And I feel like after all the testing I've done, and you can see all those videos in the playlist, I finally got a grasp on what I like and dislike about it, and I think it's time to actually do my review. Before I jump in, I want to say thank you to Break Free for sponsoring this video. Bear in mind that I had a 2020 DRZ400s, and it remains one of my favorite bikes of all time, and I've said countless times, it is the bike I regret selling the most. So that will bias my opinions about the 2025 DRZ4s, but not maybe in the way that you're thinking. So first up, let's just talk about specs because they're pretty important, particularly on this bike, and the things we're going to discuss in the pros and cons section. So first of all, this is the Suzuki 2025 DRZ4s. The MSRP on this bike is $8,999. That is $9 grand. It has a 398cc four-stroke liquid-cooled single-cylinder dual overhead cam engine, and it now has fuel injection, which the old version did not. The DRZ400 was carbureted. They claim it has 37.5 horsepower at 8,000 RPMs and 27.3 pound-feet of torque. At 6,500 RPMs, they retained the 5-speed constant mesh transmission from the previous bike. The seat height is 36.2 inches. The fuel capacity is 2.3 US gallons or 8.7 liters. The claimed wet weight of this bike is 333 pounds. That's 151 kilograms. It now has a Bosch anti-lock braking system and the Suzuki traction control system, which has 4 modes, including a gravel mode, which is more off-road tuned and works fairly well for gravel, and in my experience hasn't been super great on anything else. Front suspension travel is 11 inches or 280 millimeters. Rear suspension travel is 11.6 inches. That is 296 millimeters. It has a fully adjustable KYB inverted fork. The wheels are 21 inches in the front, 18 inches in the back. So the classic off-road dual sport sizing, which means the tire options are basically unlimited, and it has 11.8 inches of ground clearance, which is 300 millimeters. So first, the pros. What do I like about this bike? Well, there's a lot. I really like riding this bike. I think the power is absolutely perfect for me, for what I want to do. It has enough to be fun and usable, but it's not twitchy or uncontrollable. You're not thinking about, oh, I hope I don't whiskey throttle this all the time. It's there when you need it. It comes on gradually. You've got a lot of low-end torque. It's just a very fun bike to ride. It's a very confidence-inspiring bike. It's smooth and easy to ride, and it's probably my favorite dual sport to ride off-road right now, of all the ones that I've tested and ridden recently. It has fuel injection, which is a big upgrade from the previous version. No more carburetors to deal with. No more making sure that you find non-ethanol fuel so you don't gunk up your carburetor. No more rejetting for different altitudes or having to run a choke or it not starting on a cold day on a high mountain. You just turn the key and the thing starts. Fuel injection is great for that. It now has ABS, which is much safer on the road. That's super helpful if you spend any time at all on the road. I think the suspension is fantastic. Other than a respring in the rear, I don't think I would need to redo the whole suspension. I just want to get it set up for myself. Obviously, I'm a little heavy for the stock spring, so I'd get a new spring, but otherwise, I'm very happy with the suspension, and I have pushed it pretty hard since I've had this thing. The new dash is way better than the old DRZ dash, which had almost no information, and the biggest improvement there is there's a fuel gauge, which is, you know, a super underrated feature. Like, you don't need it, because you can always just set the trip odometer or the fuel consumption, but man, it sure is nice to have that reassurance of a fuel gauge. I don't know why bikes still come out without fuel gauges, but it does happen. The clutch is very smooth, very refined. It is much smoother overall than the old DRZ. It feels less like a World War II biplane and more like a smooth, efficient running modern machine. There is a big difference in feel there. I like that they came back with the classic yellow, great color for the DRZ. I also really like the gray, and I really like the supermoto color. So in terms of colors and styling, I think they did a great job. This bike has a 3,000 mile oil change interval, or 3,700 depending on who you ask. The point is, it's over 3,000 miles, and valve adjustments are at 15,000 miles. That is a huge improvement over other bikes that are more powerful and more expensive than this. It is better than any of the KTM or Beta offerings, and about the same as the Honda, Kawasaki, Yamaha offerings that sit below it in the food chain. This bike is a true dual sport. It is not a dirt bike with mirrors like a KTM 500 EXCF, nor is it a street bike that they pretend can go off-road like something like the Honda CB500X. In my 5 types of dual sport bikes, this is definitely a streety dirt bike, moving towards mostly dirt bike. It's that capable, but it's got enough concessions that it does fine, particularly if you're not spending a lot of time on the highway, both on the road and off. It's very fun to ride. And this bike is very confidence-inspiring. tiring. I say that a lot, but I really, as soon as I swung my leg over it, it felt like coming home. I would take this bike, and again, grain of salt because I'm not the world's best rider, but I would gladly ride this anywhere I'm willing to ride any motorcycle off-road. And that includes most of the dirt bikes I've been on. I feel like I could take it on some of the single track and hill climbs and stuff if I had to. And when you're out dual sport riding, you don't have to do that stuff because the road is never going to be that bad. But I'm confident that if I wanted to take it trail riding, because I have, it could handle that and pass with flying colors and be a blast, because it was. Before we talk about cons, I have to talk to you about one of the most cost-effective ways to exponentially increase your safety while you're riding on the road is to add more visibility to the back of your helmet with a brake-free unit like this one. You know that I am very concerned about visibility on the road. Statistically, the most dangerous thing to motorcyclists on the road is other drivers. So anything you can do to increase your visibility is a good thing. So this is the brake-free elevated brake light. This just attaches to the back of your helmet. I have a very simple mount on the back of my helmet. As you can see, it's just adhesived on there. You don't have to screw or drill into your helmet. Obviously that would be bad, but you just pop it on like that. And it's on there, it's not going anywhere. And what this does is, one, it gives you an elevated brake light high up where drivers are looking instead of just the ones on the back of your bike. Two, it is an accelerometer. So when you brake suddenly, it lights up. When you brake not suddenly, it lights up. When you brake gradually, it lights up. When I first heard about this, I thought, that's probably dumb. I probably have to plug it into my bike or do some kind of app. No, none of that. It charges USB, chargers on the bottom. You attach the mount to your helmet, you put the brake-free unit on, and that's it. You turn it on, you're good. That's all you have to do. It's literally that easy. You can't put a price on safety, but you can save 10 bucks on this one if you buy it using promo code Dork in the road at the link in the description. Thanks to Brake-Free for sponsoring this video. Obviously, I run one all the time. Highly recommend this product. Link in the description. Let's talk about cons. What do I not like about the new updated DRZ4s from Suzuki? Well, the modes, first of all. I didn't want modes in the first place. I don't know that a dual sport needs modes necessarily, particularly not a 400cc dual sport, but they added them anyway. And grain of salt here too, because mine might be broken. Legitimately, it's different than any other traction control I've ever used in that it's just kicking on constantly when I hit the throttle. Anytime I try to accelerate, the traction control kicks in, versus on other bikes I've ridden, it would wait until the tire spun and then kick in. So maybe it's broken, I don't know, but I got no use out of the modes. Power modes are nice, I guess, if you're putting somebody who isn't as experienced on a bike and you want to cut the power back, or you're riding in super rainy conditions. Sure, okay, but it's a dual sport. I don't really want that stuff on a dual sport. Gravel mode is the exception here. It's pretty useful, but only on gravel. It definitely saved me from power sliding out a couple times, and I low-sided one time when it was off, where it would have saved me. Sprained my wrist, actually. But when I got it out to the sand and anything looser than gravel, it wouldn't work. It was too inconsistent. A lot of jerking back and forth as it cut power and didn't, because it couldn't figure out what to do in the sand. And other brands, off-road traction control is better than that. The KTM doesn't do that. It's a mixed bag for me. I would kick gravel on if I was going to be just hauling ass down a gravel road for a long period of time, but otherwise those modes are off. That seems like a wasted feature, and all that adds weight, which I don't like. Speaking of weight, they made this bike heavier. It's even heavier than what was one of the most maligned heavy dual sports of all time. It's now 333 pounds claimed. Throw heavier tires on there, a rack, a few other things that you're probably going to put on it, and it's going to be closer to 350 pounds. Admittedly, it doesn't ride heavy. It doesn't feel heavy when you're riding it. I don't notice a huge difference between it and even like a 250-pound dirt bike, but when you pick it up, you definitely feel that. The tank is still small. I know complaining about a small tank on a dual sport is stupid. It's like complaining about getting wet when it rains, but like, if only they made these with bigger tanks. Like a 3-gallon tank would be a game changer on a dual sport. 2.3 is bigger and it's about standard, but a 3-gallon tank would not be difficult to add, and that would give you the range you need to do just about anything. Most BDR sections are less than 150 miles. It would just drastically reduce the fuel anxiety, and I know that because I have a 300L Rally with a 3-gallon plus tank, and it is much less nerve-wracking to ride back into the backcountry knowing I just have more fuel on board. And the biggest con that you've been waiting for is here, and that is there's no 6th gear. This bike tops out at 81 miles an hour, at least this one that I have. I couldn't get it to go any faster than that. Maybe 85 on a good day. It's rideable on the freeway. I took it on the freeway and made a video about that, but more than 81 miles an hour would be appreciated. And I just feel like, and I hate to bite that hand that feeds me, but I also just have to be honest, it feels like Suzuki isn't listening. They either don't understand what we want and need in a dual sport here in America, because in Japan they don't have the long highway stretches that we have necessarily, the big wide open spaces. We asked for 2 things, fuel injection and 6th gear. We got the fuel injection, But if you asked me to choose between the two, I definitely would have picked the 6th gear. And I just think that blows a lot of potential for this bike. And like I said, they just ignored a pretty huge, pretty obvious ask. The number one thing people said about the DRZ is still the number one thing people say about this. You think they would have added it just to keep us from saying it anymore. And yes, I know there's a reason behind it. There's an engineering reason behind it. Something to do with wanting to keep the case narrow. But I would much rather have a wider case in a 6th gear. I would ride this bike more than any other bike I owned if it had a 6th gear. And it's just such an obvious miss. It makes me annoyed. There's no rear mounting points for luggage, and the fender is pretty flimsy. It's too flimsy to use fender hooks or drill through the plastic itself. There is a subframe with a crossbar, so you could put a bolt through that, which would give you some stability back there for mounting, but you're limited then in where you can put it. It's not as configurable. You're probably going to put a rack on it anyway, but it was just annoying because I tried to put a soft rack on it and it worked on the 390 and it would not work on this because the plastic is just so much flimsier. My last con is the other most obvious one, and that is the price. Give me this bike for $8 grand and a 6th gear and I will show you the best-selling dual sport motorcycle of all time. I don't understand why it's $9,000. So yeah, pros, cons, all of that. Really, what is my final conclusion? What's my review here on this bike? And let me take you back. So long before I ever got my hands on this bike, when they were doing the launch here in Oregon, I made a video about the DRZ4s, and it was my attempt to figure out where it fit in the overall lineup of motorcycles that exist today. I decided in that video that it didn't really fit anywhere, but now that I've ridden it, I have a much better idea who the ideal rider is for this bike. It's me. I am an intermediate rider who seeks intermediate power. I don't want to do a ton of maintenance and I don't need peak performance. I need a powerful enough bike that's fun to ride and doesn't require much from me other than a yearly oil change. This is that bike. It is perfect for me. The DRZ4S is unique in a ton of ways. It's the only Japanese dual sport in its class. It sits above the 200, 225, 300 bikes from Yamaha, Kawi, and Honda. It has more power than those bikes, but admittedly less approachability. It's less beginner friendly, although with the modes where you can tone the power down, that's mitigated a little, but it's still really tall and intimidating for a new rider. It does not have the finicky nature of the more powerful dual sports from Beta or KTM. It sits in the middle in every way, and the price of $9,000 is reflection of that. The 300L and the KLX 300 MSRP is right around $6,000. The KTM and the Beta 500 sit at $12,000 or $13,000. So by that logic, at $9,000, the DRZ is right where it should be, price-wise, theoretically. And yes, I've heard all the arguments about inflation and how it's the same price as the original DRZ when it debuted if you adjust for inflation and yada, yada, yada. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. I care about what the market looks like right now. I don't care about theoretical math from 20 years ago. What I do care about is the dirt curious customer who walks into a dealership and sees a very similar looking bike for 50% more money and doesn't understand why. I care about the new adventure rider who could use that extra $3,000 to buy luggage, riding gear, and camping gear, and I've proven that because I made a video where I listed out $2,800 to get a full set of riding gear, camping gear, and luggage for your bike. And most importantly, and this is gonna sound selfish, but it's a review video and therefore my opinion, I care about me. And I just don't feel like the upgrades have justified the increase in the price on this thing. The DRZ4S is for sure a better bike than the DRZ400s was, but it's almost 30% more expensive than a new DRZ400s was in 2024. I love this bike. I love riding it. I want to buy it, but it's not 30% better than a DRZ400. The riding experience is maybe 10% better. Capability is about the same. Highway riding is the same. ABS makes you safer on the road, but adds a bunch of fiddly complexity when you leave the highway, and not to mention the weight of the ABS unit. The modes do nothing for me, and therefore they stay off, so they might as well not exist. Again, another thing that adds weight that I'm not going to use. For all of this, I'm expected to fork over an additional $2,000 versus what this bike's predecessor cost just a year ago. If it only had 6 gears, you're gonna get tired of hearing this drum getting beaten, but it's just true. It's got plenty of power to cruise all day at 85, but the gearing makes it difficult and borderline unbearable. This is a bike I'd ride all over the country with a 6 gear and a 3-gallon tank. I would do everything I do. It would be the ultimate unicorn Swiss Army knife bike for me with a 6 gear and a 3-gallon tank. But as it stands, my 300L Rally is more comfortable on the highway and nearly as capable when I leave the highway. It's not as fun as a DRZ4S, but in terms of value, That $9,000 is just really hard to swallow. At $8,000, I'd feel bad about the price, but I'd pay it. $9,000 feels like being kicked in the gut. My local dealership is selling Tenere 700s brand new for $9,000. In the past, they've sold KTM 500 EXCFs for $9,000. Both of those are just a lot more bike for $9,000. They don't do the exact same thing. They don't fulfill the exact same niche, though that KTM is pretty close. But when you see this next to a Tenere 700 for the same price, I just don't think you're going to be like, that DRZ is a great value. I just don't feel like it is. Like I said before, it's always kind of felt like Suzuki wasn't really in tune with the American dual sport market, or, and I hope this isn't the case, they just don't care about it. And honestly, the questionable decisions made with this upgrade, and I'm using upgrade in quotes, kind of reinforced that for me. I know the US is not the whole world, but we buy a hell of a lot of bikes. And we have a pretty unique situation here in terms of riding in North America. But it is unfair to judge this bike based on what it could have been. I can only evaluate what it actually is, and through that lens, my review is simple. I absolutely love riding this bike on dirt. It feels like it was designed for someone at my skill level and beyond. It's incredibly confidence-inspiring, and like I said, I would take it anywhere I'd be willing to ride a motorcycle. It is easily, and I mean this when I say it, easily my favorite dual sport to ride off-road, and I've ridden a lot of dual sports. If you line them all up and said, we're gonna go hit some trails or we're gonna ride a BDR, I would jump on this one immediately, every time, for off-road riding. Because of that, I want it to be my BDR bike. I want to ride it hours to the beginning of a BDR, ride the BDR and then ride home. But the lack of top speed and overall discomfort for long stretches on the highway mean this bike will end up being treated the same way as my 300L is now. It'll go on the back of the truck to be ridden after I've driven to the destination. But it's not a bike I'm going to willingly spend long hours riding on the road. That trade-off, that sacrifice might be worth it at $7,500 or even $8,000. It's better enough than the 300L and the KLX to warrant that kind of price difference, but it isn't $7,500 or $8,000. So at the end of the day, my review is simple. It's a super capable bike, it's an absolute blast to ride off the pavement, but it's lacking on the highway and it's overpriced. Should you buy one? Well, I personally am definitely considering it. I really like riding it that much, despite all the cons I've just outlined for you. But if you're considering this bike, there is also the super obvious elephant in the room. You can buy a low mileage DRZ400S loaded with mods for half what this thing costs. That bike will do everything that this bike will do, and it'll be 90% as good at it. That is a lot more value for your dollar. If you have to have the most modern version or you just hate carburetors, well then you will enjoy the DRZ4S. It is literally the best, most capable Japanese dual sport on the market, and yes, I'm including the Honda CRF 450 RL in that because while technically it's a bit more capable, it's so hard to ride that few people will get the actual benefit from that the way they could on this far more approachable DRZ4S. But if you're on a limited budget trying to get as much bike as you can for your money, well, then I might point you elsewhere, maybe towards Facebook Marketplace. So yeah, that's a mixed review, but I think hopefully you get the gist of what I love about it and what disappoints me about it, but I'm curious what you think, so please let us know in the comments. Is it overpriced? Would you buy one of these? What bikes are you considering instead? If you're thinking about a DRZ4S, I have a full playlist, the freeway test, top speed test, all the off-road riding I've done, which I'll link for you, so check that out for other videos and subscribe so you don't miss future content. Thanks again to Break Free for sponsoring this video, and thanks to Suzuki for loaning me this bike long enough to ride and review it, and thanks to Jesse, aka One Lost Moto, for getting hurt and not being able to ride it, so they gave it to me instead. Thank you for watching, I appreciate you, and please do not forget to be excellent to each other. Thank you.
Excellent!